On today's World Insight with Tian Wei, the Taiwan leadership election 1 month away. What are the issues that will rally the polls in the final stretch? And the World Trade Organization in limbo. Former WTO chief Pascal Lamy weighs in on how to keep the multilateral trading system alive.
All will have to accept that the rules cannot be changed just in one direction or on one issue.
And here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. We begin today's show in Taiwan, where the local election is exactly 1 month away. The result will determine the future of cross-Strait ties, a key part of culture, economy, and life on the island. Before we get down to the discussion with our panelists from the mainland and Taiwan, let's take a look at this first.
A race between Tsai Ing-wen and a mayor from the south, Han Kuo-yu. According to the latest polls, Tsai has an advantage over her opponent from the Kuomintang Party, but her own Democratic Progressive Party may not retain majority of the legislative branches. The key issue dividing the two parties is their vision for moving the island further away or closer to Beijing. In contrast to Tsai's constant call to combat Chinese influence, Han says a cross-strait relationship is essential for peace, stability, and development. Despite receiving military backing from the United States, Taiwan receives no recognition in the United Nations. Since Tsai took office, 7 nations have abandoned ties with the island in favor of Beijing. Amid threats of global economic slowdown, the Chinese mainland continues to welcome Taiwan investments. Authorities in Beijing recently criticized Taiwan's DPP for its effort to incite hostility against the mainland and warned its interference in Hong Kong affairs will not succeed. Faced with geopolitical uncertainties and spurs of unrest around the world, voters in Taiwan have a lot to consider when they cast their ballots.
For more discussion on the Taiwan regional election, we are joined in Taipei by Joanna Lei, former legislator and chief executive officer of the Chunhua 21st Century think tank. In New York, we have originally from China's mainland, Victor Gao Zhikai, vice president of the Center for China and Globalization. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our program. I want to ask you, Ms. Lei, about the latest situation as the polls are suggesting there is a clear winner. But at this point, what is your analysis of the situations for the two candidates?
Well, certainly this year the general election is characterized by 3 factors. One is false news and unscientific polls. The second one is extensive cyber warfare, and the third one certainly is international intervention. So Han, as one of the candidates, have asked his supporters to not cooperate in any public opinion polls. In fact, he's asked people to answer that they would support Tsai Ing-wen in any calls given to any of his supporters. That is to take away the effect of the false polls. And therefore, any poll number that you're seeing right now will not be a scientific representation of what the voters will really do come January 11th.
Now, given the circumstances, as you mentioned, Ms. Lei, what do you make of now till the election, which is exactly 1 month away? Apparently, there are a lot of things going on, a lot of conspiracy theories going on, and a lot of chaos going on right now, if I could use that word.
Which certainly is a word that is chosen by most people in Taiwan as the word characterizing 2019. I think during the next month there will be a lot of false news and a lot of political maneuver And primarily, there will be lots of street activities from both camps. Up to date, Han Kuo-yu's camp and his supporters are extremely strong in showing support in all mass rallies. As a result, Tsai Ing-wen has not held any major mass rally for her bid for the leadership. So we're looking at the next big rally from DPP, which will indicate how many people are passionate enough to come out of their comfort homes and come to the street to support Tsai Ing-wen. Right now, it seems to be a neck-to-neck race. It's not a foregone conclusion at all.
While you were speaking, Ms. Lei, we were playing out a footage of the character in Chinese, which is called luan, chaos. That is certainly being selected by the local media. If we could have that footage once again on the screen as the key word for this year, because the world is changing, and certainly there are a lot of chaos going on in the Taiwan local election, or leading to the local election. There we go. That is the Chinese character, chaos. That certainly has been the key word many believe that could characterize what's going on in Taiwan for this year. Now, let me go to you, Mr. Gao. Obviously, the Chinese mainland authorities have been saying once and again that there needs to be a fair election in Taiwan. But given what Ms. Lei earlier mentioned, the three factors, mainly false polls, infiltration, intervention from some of those other countries, and as well as cyber warfare, there's likely to be an unfair election. Mr. Gao, what do you make of the potential?
Yes, indeed. There is only 1 month before the local election in Taiwan. I was in Taiwan a couple of months ago, and I met quite a few local leaders over there. And my impression, and also my impression based on the most recent development, is that there is a lot of uncertainty in Taiwan about the upcoming election, mainly because a lot of confusion in the territory, and also there is a lot of challenge, I think, as to which direction should be the island should follow in terms of its economic development, and how to deal with its relations with mainland China. So I think this election will be very important, but right now we do not know which candidate will emerge as the leader. And I think this is very important because right now we also face a lot of challenges in Hong Kong, and it's very apparent that the United States government is interfering in the internal affairs of Taiwan more and more after enacting a law about Taiwan. So there will be a lot of uncertainties, and I think we need to follow the situation very closely. So long as the elections are fair and democratic, I think whatever outcome of the election, there will be no major change to the fact that Taiwan is part of China, and Taiwan need to handle its relations with mainland China in a very responsible way for the benefit of the people in Taiwan.
Ms. Lei, now, we all understand very well, back in the early 21st century, shall we say, during the George W. Bush administration, the status quo about the relations between Taiwan and the mainland, and also the status quo of relations between Taiwan and how the U.S. sees it, has been very much set. And that has been the principle Washington has been upholding, respecting the one China policy. Now, what do you make of all of the latest, the geopolitical changes going on in the Asia-Pacific region, and as a result of that, the ever-intense pressure coming from Washington regarding where the relation will be between the mainland and Taiwan? Of course, China is exercising sovereignty in this regard very firmly.
Well, certainly the question is extremely insightful, because there has been an established benchmark and status quo in terms of how U.S. will conduct its relationships with both mainland China and Taiwan, as well as how Taiwan and mainland China will conduct their bilateral discussions or relationship. However, during the Trump administration, a lot of those status quo, in your words, has been changed. So, the only status quo is dynamic. U.S. has changed and have moved the bar from one end to another. We all recalled when U.S. severed the diplomatic tie with Taiwan and established its diplomatic tie with mainland China, which was during the 1978-79. But after 40 years, all of a sudden, it's turning a tipping point. It's now supporting Taiwan in terms of its vibrant democracy and humanitarian values. So as such, this current election is seen as a show of force, a show of camaraderie between Taiwan and the United States, and how Taiwan will play a pivotal role in the East Asia affairs. So we are seeing explicit, open, and strong intervention from the United States, even including the involvement of Oslo Forum as well as NED.
Very interesting what you have just mentioned, Mr. Gao. Now, one of the things that really reflects what Ms. Lei just mentioned is about the U.S. arms sales to Taiwan and the ever more mixing the relationship with all the latest development. Some are very negative from China's perspective between China and the United States. What do you make of all of these latest developments, and how do you think people from other parts of the world should understand some of the most important facts right now?
Well, first of all, it is indeed a fact that overall China-U.S. relations are deteriorating. And it has been getting worse and worse over the past 2 years or so. And there is no expectation that China-U.S. relations can immediately improve in the coming years. So in this overall deteriorating framework of China-U.S. relations, it seems that Washington is very eager to look for leverage points in dealing with the People's Republic of China. And Taiwan comes very handily and very conveniently as a lever in U.S. applying more pressure against China. However, I don't think the United States can overplay its hand. Remember, 41 years ago, it was the United States that severed its relations with Taiwan, withdrew all the U.S. troops from Taiwan, and also rescinded the U.S.-Taiwan alliance treaty. So this is a very, very heavy stuff for the United States to do. I don't think anyone in Washington can reach a conclusion that by siding with Taiwan against China will serve the fundamental interests of the American people. No, it's not reaching that tipping point at all. So China-U.S. relations will remain the most important relations, and leaders in Taiwan should really keep this very much in mind in navigating through this very turbulent and uncertain period of time.
Yeah, and Ms. Lei, of course, in a way, Taiwan has been used over and again as a bargaining chip by Washington toward Beijing. But how much do you think that will be reminded to the people in Taiwan when they look at what's going on right now on the island and the future of the island?
Well, certainly there is a very clear generational gap. The youngest cohorts, the young adults, 35 years old or under, have no historical recollection of what Mr. Gao just mentioned. Their relationship and their historical insights have been formed by the DPP, and right now Tsai Ing-wen is playing a very strong hand by both implying and stating that the United States will support Taiwan, even in the face of a mainland China threat. So the young people has been siding even with some of the Hong Kong students and chanting on how Taiwan should resist any force or any coercion from mainland China and stay independent. And that, to me, is a very dangerous sign, because Tsai Ing-wen neglected to tell the people the whole truth and neglected to tell them the entire history.
Well, on the other hand, it was the Taiwan authority that tried to accuse the mainland of quote-unquote meddling with the upcoming election. And Tsai Ing-wen said the Chinese mainland wants to force Taiwan to accept so-called One China, Two Systems policy by issuing the 26 measures. By the way, the 26 measures are issued by the mainland to encourage more exchanges between the mainland and Taiwan through business, academic, and social ties. Let's listen to now the response from the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council of China as to how they respond to the latest quote-unquote accusation.
首先呢，就是我们是从来呢都不介入台湾地区的选举。
First, we never interfered in the regional election in Taiwan. When we were working on the 26 measures, we talked to Taiwanese business people and listened to their appeals. We tested some of the measures in pilot projects and then applied them comprehensively. Some of the measures allow Taiwanese business people to participate in some emerging industries they are specifically interested in. Whether the measures are gestures or breakthroughs, we will let the results do the talking.
That, of course, is a spokeswoman coming from the Taiwan Affairs Office from the State Council from China. Now, Ms. Lei, the thing is, the Taiwan authority right now could well use the administrative power it has still before the election to push forward what they call this quote-unquote anti-infiltration bill in order to block more interactions between the mainland and Taiwan, from business communities to the academic communities to the common exchanges between the two sides. Do people understand the real nature of this, Ms. Lei?
Well, certainly it is a possibility, but I think it's more a raised eyebrow kind of tactic, because the Congress will be in recess by December 20th. However, the signal is really clear that the current DPP government will regard anyone who has dealings with mainland China as a potential threat or potential infiltrator. And that will send a chilling signal to anyone in mainland China, especially those who do not support the DPP government. So it is both a election tactic, but also a longer-term strategic move. But I think it will backfire DPP, because the relationship across Taiwan Straits right now is extremely tight, and the people moving back and forth number to up to 2-3 million people. And if they do feel the threat from the current DPP government, that will backfire DPP.
If people has ever looked at history, now one of the fact is, even for the direct flight between the mainland and Taiwan for the Spring Festival, which is the most important traditional festival for the Chinese community around the world, has been painstakingly taking so much effort in the history by two sides in order to be established, so that people can really travel to see their families on both sides and be able to celebrate. Now, Mr. Gao, this is not just about that, it's also about business ties. So many Taiwan business people are working hard here on the mainland, having their operations here on the mainland and the other way around too. So what do you make of the potential that the upcoming election would put more pressure on the real exchanges between the two sides?
Well, overall and philosophically speaking, I'm very optimistic. Why? Because I think that 23 million people in Taiwan, as well as up to 1.4 billion people in mainland China, we all want to have peace and stability in the cross-Strait relations. I don't think there are real people, either in mainland China or in Taiwan, who want to have a war against each other. I think President Xi Jinping said the right thing. Chinese do not need to fight against the Chinese anymore. And I think for Ms. Tsai Ing-wen or for DPP or for any political force in Taiwan, if they fight against the megatrend of greater and more improved relations between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait, eventually they will alienate the people. Eventually they will be dumped by a history. And I think this is a mega trend.
Okay.
Whoever who becomes the next local leader in Taiwan cannot really fight against the mega trend of more improved relations between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait.
I see. And final words, very briefly, from you as well, Ms. Lei.
Well, certainly, I think in addition to the leadership election, there will be congressional seats. All 113 seats will be up for grabs. So in order for the cross-strait relations to go back to its normal track, which was between 2008 and 2016, the DPP will have to be ousted, and KMT has to win both the leadership election and the congressional election.
It's going to be a daunting task, I guess, for some of the political parties on the island. For now, I want to thank both of you for joining us for your insights.
Only a swing of 20 seats.
Thank you.
Now, thank you so much, Gao Zhikai and also Joanna Lei. Really appreciate it.